Manever I say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there, I see them yopo.
I don't accept that the full effect of the U.S.-Israel aggression against Iran should be passed on to the Ghanaian consumer.
Why?
It is most unfair.
Okay.
Let me explain.
All right.
One, Ghana exports some crude. You understand? Not in sufficient quantities, but we do export some crude.
Yeah.
So if there are gains for exporters, we make some money. But that is not all. It may not be enough, I agree, but we will certainly make some money. How much is it? I don't know. But we can do the arithmetic. This war has also led to a very sharp increase in the price of gold.
True.
And Ghana is a major gold producer. How much are we making out of that and so on? So I'm saying that the impact is not all negative for Ghana. There are some positive impacts as well.
Right.
So it should be possible to net off the positive impact on gold and crude and so on against the escalating world market price. And if we do that, then we will not pass on the full cost of the crisis to the consumer. So this is my formula. I do not accept that we should just pass on the cost to the consumer. Otherwise, why do you have governments? You have governments so that they can be doing these balancing games and so on. If at every time there's a crisis, you pass on the full cost to the consumer, then we don't need a government. Then you can actually go to any primary school and select the class 6 pupils to come and run government. You understand? It is because we at all times must aim at making life more bearable for the ordinary. They say ordinary. I want to use average Ghanaian.
Yeah.
That is why we have government.
Yeah.
That is why we want the best, our best in politics, economy, and so on, to be running government for us.
True.
So I totally oppose to this idea of just passing on cost. It doesn't demonstrate, that our leaders have the right acumen, and so on. So that's my position.
Okay.
Now, I think it's important also to understand, and I've listened to a lot of the experts, opening up the Strait of Hormuz is a near impossible task. Near impossible task. What do the Iranians have to do? Just manage every now and then to fire one missile across the strait. Because what is fueling this is uncertainty. It's about not knowing when a missile can hit you and so on. And it's possible to maintain this level of uncertainty over a long period of time with very minimum effort.
Right.
Okay. Now, I was listening to one expert, naval expert, a retired U.S. naval officer who was being interviewed on one of the major Western networks. And he says, look, practically, all Iran has to do is to sink its own boats in the strait. It's a narrow strait. Sink its own boats in the strait, and that will cause a lot of commotion.
Yeah.
So, you understand? Now, this Trumpian idea of getting NATO states to bring in their warships and so on, it will clog the strait.
Yeah.
And still impede trade and so on. But you see, my brother, there is something which is not often said, but that is the key factor. Okay. And listen. You see the US dollar. The US dollar has become the currency of preference for international trade. In reality, however, the US dollar is worthless. It's just a piece of paper. The US left the gold standard a long time ago. The US dollar is not backed by gold. What gives the US dollar its strength is that it is the currency which is used for international oil trade. That's an agreement between Saudi Arabia initially and the US. Okay. So the value of the US dollar, even though it's just paper, it's not backed by gold, it's not backed by anything, is that if you have to trade in oil, or if you have to trade in oil, you have to trade in the US dollar. Now that is changing. How is that changing? That is changing also partly because of the imposition of sanctions on Russia. So Russia then decided that to overcome the sanctions, it would trade its oil in rubles rather than in the dollar. It got India to agree to trade in oil using the Indian national currency. Now China is trading in oil using the Chinese national currency. And these are the major consumers. You understand? Iran now says they would accept the Chinese national currency rather than the dollar.
Yes.
Do you see what is happening?
Yeah.
Now, because the US dollar is the currency of preference for international trade and so on, anytime the US needs money, it runs a huge deficit. Anytime it needs money, it just prints paper. You understand what I mean?
I get it.
Just prints paper.
Yeah.
That way, it is able to deal with its own internal deficit without having to worry. When the US is indebted, it prints dollars.
Right.
You understand? That way also, it has been able to export its inflation. So a lot of the inflation which is suffered around the world is US inflation, which is exported to us.
Yes.
Okay. So all of these changes that are happening in the supply of petroleum, trading in petroleum and so on, ultimately will weaken the US economy further because the US dollar would no longer be the currency of preference for international trade.
Right.
Other currencies are getting into the fray.
Right.
This is frightening.
Right.
This is frightening for the neocons in the US and so on. They want to do something about it. So when the US seizes Venezuelan oil, it is partly to address this problem. When Donald Trump says that if you want Venezuelan oil, don't go to Caracas, come to me and so on, why? The US is now trading Venezuelan oil, which would otherwise have been traded in rubles and Chinese yuan and other currencies. But because the US has taken control over Venezuelan oil, it is now able to trade Venezuelan oil in dollars.
Right.
To still keep the dollar floating.
Yeah.
This is a dimension which we don't speak about.
True.
But it's a very important and crucial dimension in the equation.
Right.
I hope you understand what I'm
The
saying.
dollar is under threat.
The dollar is under threat.
under
And the dollar is under threat because of the mistakes that the capitalist countries themselves have made.
Right.
You understand? Sometime in history, Spain was such a powerful country. You understand?
Yeah.
And Spain's national currency was a currency of preference for international trade. Now, what happened was that Spain got into so many wars around the world, and it was having difficulty in financing its war effort. So it began diluting its silver and gold coins. You understand what I mean? And it lost the chance for its currency to become the currency of preference for international trade. That is how the Spanish Empire collapsed. Sure. Not too long ago, a couple of hundreds of years ago, Britain was the dominant power in the world. The British pound was the currency of preference for international trade.
Right.
That also collapsed. Why? Because Britain overstretched itself.
Right.
And its currency collapsed. The US, as we speak today, is overstretching itself and its currency is collapsing and there is panic. And because the US dollar, its value is related to the oil trade and so on, it is anxious to seize the oil trade and dominate it. so that the value of his currency or the relevance of his currency may not be destroyed.
Right.
That is the point.
Right.
All of these things about weapons of mass destruction and so on, it's just a ruse. And let me tell you why it's a ruse. You see, the Iranian nuclear program was begun in 1957. That's when Iran began its nuclear program. The Iranian nuclear program was begun with the full assistance of the United States of America, Germany, and France. They started. Indeed, at some point, Iran reached 95% enrichment of uranium under the guidance of the US. The US trained more than 4,000 nuclear scientists to manage Iran's program. There was no problem with the Iranian program until 1979. Why? Because the Iranian Revolution occurred in 1979.
Yeah.
That is when the US began panicking. It was losing its influence in Iran and so on. That's when it began panicking. But another interesting dimension of all of this is simply the fact that the people they are killing. Ayatollah Khomeini, who was killed on the first day, is the one person who for 30 years has insisted that Iran should not produce a weapon of mass destruction. Who has actually issued a fatwa saying that the production of nuclear weapons and their possession is a crime against God. Why kill him? If your concern is about Iran's capacity to produce a nuclear weapon, why do you kill the very person who is against that? Doesn't make sense. You see, the guy who was killed yesterday, the head of Iranian national security, is somebody I know. Okay? I've met him, I think, twice or thrice. The last time, Ghana sent a parliamentary delegation to Iran, and I was in Tehran. So there was a meeting with Right Honorable Do Ajaho, and I was invited to attend that meeting. So I was in that meeting.
Okay.
This is perhaps the coolest gentleman I've ever met. Very rational and so on.
Ali is his name.
Yes. This is a guy who was opposed to the production of a nuclear weapon.
True.
You've gone and killed him. You've gone and killed him. He was vehemently opposed to the production of a nuclear weapon.
In fact, the Americans were comfortable with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've gone and killed him.
Yeah, they were comfortable with him.
Now, you are killing all those who are opposed to the production of a nuclear weapon. A new crop of leadership is beginning to emerge in Iran, and we don't know what their commitments are going to be.
True.
Or whether their commitments are going to change in the light of the aggression against them, and so on. It doesn't make any sense. You understand?
Right.
Now, Moro, right now, if you look at the situation, the Americans are having to move their weapons from Asia, from Korea and Japan and so on, to West Asia, to the Gulf, because they are having difficulty getting the necessary weapons to fight.
Yeah.
Okay? They are calling on their NATO allies to bring their warships to help them. The NATO allies say, no, we are not coming. Zelensky is offering, drones. They say, we don't trust Zelensky and so on. They are in a crisis. They don't even have the weaponry that is necessary in order to prosecute this war for a long period. Iran, on the other hand, doesn't have to do much. If I were handling Iranian security, I would sit pretty. Every now and then, release 5, 10 missiles, 20 missiles. It's enough. Because Iran is profiting from the insecurity in the region. You understand? If you take the Gulf states, they are tourist destinations. Dubai benefits from its airport.
They're the hardest hit, actually.
Any sense of insecurity, and the sense of insecurity can be produced by one missile.
Yeah.
Just one missile flying across Dubai sends a signal, and Dubai is in trouble.
True.
You understand? So Iran doesn't have to do that much in order to win. It has to do very little in order to win. That's the problem. That's the problem that the United States and Netanyahu's Zionist occupationist force in Israel have to deal with.
And Iran is telling their Gulf neighbors to close their U.S. bases. In fact, that's what is captured in your paper today.
But that is important for even us in Ghana.
Yeah.
Now, it must be clear to every country in the world that hosting foreign military bases has consequences.
Yeah. True.
You understand? We in Ghana have to wake up to the reality that hosting a U.S. forward operating base has consequences for us.
Yeah.
And this is an important lesson from this war. You know,
Okay.
It's so complicated.
Yeah. It's
Anyway.
Oh,
Yes, Muru. I
Uncle
think
has hijacked the conversation. Eh?
well, it's okay. As a senior with so much understanding,
he knows a lot.
so it's good listening to him. But for me,
We learn every day from him.
I want to bring the conversation back home, because over there we've had enough talk about it. So back home, what are we seeing? We are seeing increases in fuel prices at the pump. We used to have it around 11.25, in some cases 10.9. But as at yesterday, when you pass through town, it's going between 13 to 16 per liter.
Yeah.
Okay, and that is huge jump.
True.
And these are times where you don't know whether you need to follow people in terms of politicking, or we have to just be nationalistic and look at the situation without partisan lenses. Because we have history. You see, Ghana's economy is not independent of itself. We depend on a lot of factors, particularly international factors. And so when you have COVID hitting this country, when you have Russia-Ukraine war going on, and then a conversation occurs where a government tries to situate some of its challenges to the occurrences of COVID and then Russian-Ukraine war as having impact on the economy. The way and manner the opposition then, that is the NDC, took advantage and then created the impression that yes, we are having challenges, but the challenges cannot be attributed to the Russian-Ukraine war or COVID. Then you come back how many years down the line? 5 years, 6 years down the line. And you're asking yourself, why are we linking the challenges we are facing now, and even worse, if this war should drag, to the happenings in the Middle East? It tells you that these are realities. You cannot run away from them.
That statement you made is factually inaccurate.
Okay.
When you say that the NDC, when they were in opposition, had refused to accept that external or exogenous factors have an impact on the economy, it's not factually inaccurate. I mean, yes, what I recall the NDC had said at the time was that, yes, there is some impact. But the reason why we felt it the more was because our fundamentals were weak. And they can give you a litany of things that they believe you did that weakened Ghana's fundamentals. Yes.
What I said was not to say, and I was very clear in my mind, that they were not indicating that the entirety of the problem sits around the COVID or the happenings between Russia and Ukraine. But they made it very clear, including even the former then flag bearer, who is the president today, that Ukraine and Russia sit about 6,000 miles away from Ghana. So why would a bomb flying between Ukraine and Russia be said as a consequence to the happenings in Ghana and its effect? So that is the context. And even today, why the drastic or the sharp increase in petroleum prices? Isn't it the same fundamentals? Are they telling us that if what would have been the situation if the fundamentals have been weak, or if the fundamentals haven't been as it is? The reality is that this is how much crude is sold. If it goes beyond a particular price, you have to adjust your prices domestically.
Let me read just a small point. Let me read this.
I was going
no,
now, I've not
point.
even started my point.
I know. Just I want to share this information with you before you proceed.
Yes.
If you look at today's Inquisitor, the MPA boss, the Chief Executive Officer, Godwin Eduzi Tamaklo, has a response to the question you asked about whether about the impact of the rise in crude prices on Ghana's economy, and more specifically what we're paying for export price. Now this is what he says. He says sound forex management protects citizens from fuel price shocks. Now, the source, the Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana National Petroleum Authority, Mr. Godwin Eduzi Tamaklo, has emphasized the critical role of sound exchange rate management in shielding Ghanaians from the full impact of rising global fuel prices, even as crude oil continues to surge due to geopolitical conflict and supply chain challenges. He praised the sterling management of the exchange rate under the Mahama-led NDC government, noting that it has helped cushion Ghanaians amid fuel price hikes resulting from the ongoing Middle East conflict. Ghana's economy has crossed the $100 billion mark, with government projecting expansion to $140 billion by 2026, and it goes on and on and on and on.
Yeah, so you see,
what is the difference between what we're seeing today and what had happened in the past?
No. He said nothing, because when these things begin to happen, the impact, you see them over time, including depreciation of your currency. If you don't have enough buffers to protect your currency, and you can...
But Kwesi has just also made a point earlier. Sorry.
No, feel free more.
But Kwesi makes a very valid point that yes, in as much as crude oil prices are surging, or they are spiking, or they're going up, it is also true that the price of gold is going up. And we just don't export oil, we export gold.
Yes.
And so, yes, even with the exportation of oil, we're making more money. Okay, we're making more money because the price have gone up. That's one. He also makes the point that two, gold prices have shot up astronomically.
Yes.
And so we're making more money from the sale of gold.
Yes.
And the more money we make through the sale of gold, the more forex we get.
Yes.
And the more forex we get, the more we're able to tame the dollar and to appreciate the cedi. And that's the economics argument he makes. I don't know if that factors into what
no, it does. That's why you see you're not allowing me. You are not allowing me to make
my apologies.
Because I'm very clear. I sit also as a finance and economics person. You see, and it's early days yet. You see, it's early days yet to make these statements and take credit for the pricing. And I'm saying that even the jump from 11 to 16 and 13 is very significant.
It is.
To the extent of the rising of crude that we are seeing, the prices of crude. And it is because we are passing the increase to the consumer. And we are passing the increase to the consumer because we don't want to weaken our economic base.
Right.
Because if you don't want to pass it all to the consumer, then conversations around use some of your reserves, convert them into forex to cushion the purchase of the fuel. There are taxes that have been imposed over time. The 1 Ghana cedi per liter alone puts the 4.5 Ghana cedis per gallon. If you reduce or if you suspend that particular 1 Ghana cedi, it is going to sharply drop the prices down to where it used to be.
Right.
But government is still doing the mathematics and saying, we have made a lot of savings there, refusing to liquidate or pay off some debt. If we don't continue to charge it, we will come back and accumulate more debt within the next foreseeable future. So there are a lot of things that are being reviewed. And what we are saying, and where I agree with Uncle Kwesi and the Ghanaian populace, is that government should come very clear with us its strategy in managing this particular happenings. You can't keep us in the dark. At least you know that this is happening. What is our next 3 months plan? Because the government could, looking at the rising in the crude oil price, will say that, okay, between the price of wherever we used to $100 per barrel, we are not going to increase the cost of petroleum. We are going to absorb the shocks based on our reserves we've made, because government is going to contribute so much. Or we're going to use the 1 Ghana cedi that we were charging per liter, convert it from using it to pay those outstanding bills for now, and use it to cushion the cost of petroleum. And all of this should be clearly communicated to Ghanaians. And then if it crosses 100 to 120, this is what is going to mean to us. But where we keep quiet and you just tell us that if not because of the stability of the currency, we would have done what? The prices of fuel would have gone to 18 Ghana cedi or 20 Ghana cedi. Is that what Edoji is telling us? And I'm saying that government at this material moment should not continue to pass the cost of this rising cost to Ghanaians, because already we are overpricing in terms of taxes. Tax constitutes almost about 30 to 40%, almost 50%. The last time we checked with MPA, the price, the taxes and the levies built up in our petroleum model is close to 50%. So it tells you that if there are some adjustments within the taxes and the levies that we put on, the price, and you know, once you have transportation prices changing and going up, you are going to all the inflationary gains that we've been referencing. Food inflation has gone down to this percentage. Month-on-month inflation has dropped to 3.8. Wait till the next inflation statistics come for April, and you see the effect of this particular rises on our economy. And so government, and we need to learn lessons, and that is why I'm happy that this government has the benefits of hindsight. How we manage COVID, spent so much on it, thinking that we were going to use it to support cushion Ghanaians, and how many years down the line we bear the brunt of it. So those mathematics that they are making, all the calculations that they are making, the net effect is that we've come very far as a country. The cost of petroleum is rising. The speed at which it is going, we cannot continue to pass on that bill to the ordinary Ghanaian, as Kwesi will now refer to as the average Ghanaian. Let government give us clarity as at now. What is government doing to support us in terms of the rising prices in the petroleum sector? The 1 Ghana cedi that they have been charging since last year. What is government's plan in using that to mitigate the challenges that we face, so that at the end of the day we don't see inflation and all other things going on.
Okay, so let me do this briefly before you come, and I beg you. There's a free dental screening program or event that's going to be taking place here at the premises of Metro Television or the Ignite Media Group. Let me just inform you about this. Now, are you due for a dental checkup? Pepsodent, in partnership with Metro Television, is inviting you to a free dental screening at our premises. Free dental screening, which is Metro TV in partnership with Pepsodent, is organizing a free dental screening at our premises. So it's happening on Monday, that's next week, Monday, 23rd of March, and it is throughout the day. So you can pass by and get your teeth checked and all of that. So come and get your teeth checked by a professional dentist, receive expert advice, and learn how to keep your smile healthy at no cost to you. It's free. That's the point I'm trying to make. Now, let me also say that the Minerals Commission wants to remind you that there's all kinds of fake news in the system, and they want you to be aware of this. I'm trying to get that statement to you as quickly as I can, so that okay. whilst I'm looking for that statement, sorry about that. Are you looking for a business in Ghana that has global presence? If you're looking for a business which has a global presence, I've got some great news for you, fantastic news for you, so please pay attention. Now, I'm talking about a business which is totally reliable and in turn reliant on your satisfaction. Your satisfaction is key. Now, MNC Group has got you covered, okay? So just call MNC Group on any of these numbers. It's 0256, again, 056 103 2253, 056 103 2253, or 0265 505 337, 0265 505 337. MNC Group, they are experts in food commodities, trading, real estate development, and also logistics. So they have headquarters in East Legon, MNC Group. They also have offices in Dubai, they have offices in Hong Kong, Guangzhou in China, Johannesburg in South Africa, Milan in Italy. So to get the best on your deals, please call the number 02655 05 337. So 02655 05 337 or 0561 032253. If you are out of Ghana, please prefix the number with +233. MNC Group. When I say MNC Group, please say it after me. Totally reliant. MNC Group. Totally reliant. And also, and just let me just do this. Are you into agro-processing equipment manufacturing? Are you an agro-processing equipment manufacturer or a manufacturer of any of the agri machinery? Do you have any innovation or technology that can improve agro-processing? Register to join an exhibit at the Maiden Ghana Agricultural and Agro-Processing Technology Fair. Is called the Ghana Agrotech Fair 2026. It was launched yesterday by the President, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. Now, the fair being organized by the Ministry of Trade, Agribusiness and Industry in partnership with the Ghana Exim Bank is seeking to showcase locally manufactured agri machinery, implement and agro-processing equipment and technologies. The fair will also market linkages between technology developers, agro-industrial businesses, farmers, fishers, and exporters. And it's running from the 17th to the 19th of March 2026 at the Independence Square. And yesterday, the commissioning or the inauguration was beautiful. It went really well. And Metro TV was able to brought you a live coverage of yesterday's event. So to exhibit at the Ghana Agrotech Fair, it's not too late. You can still register to exhibit. Kindly call 0242 58 5419, 0242 58 5419, or 055 96 79 326. 055 96 79 326 to register. General public is invited. Ghana Agrotech Fair 2026, transforming agribusiness through local innovation and technology. The media partners are City FM Channel 1 TV, Radio Gold Daily Graphic, Metro TV, and the Media General Group. I've got some more announcements for you, but I'll pause here and bring in Uncle Kwesi Pratt so that we can look at the rest. Uncle Kwesi.
Yeah, to some extent, the Honourable Member of Parliament is right.
Okay.
But only to some extent.
Right.
The last time I checked, I looked at the petroleum price build-up. About 50% of the ex-pump price is made up of taxes and levies.
Yes.
You're right to that extent. But even more importantly, if you look at how we determine the price of petroleum products, we used assumed import prices.
True.
So if you look at the build-up, there's a reference to ex-Rotterdam. Anytime you see ex-Rotterdam on the build-up, what it means is that if we were to import our product from Rotterdam, this would be the price. Yeah. But interestingly, the price may fall below, the actual price may fall below Rotterdam pricing, which is the assumed price. So you make a lot of money from the taxes, which is about 50%, and you can also make money from the assumed pricing if you buy below the assumed price. So to that extent, Honorable, you're right. Okay? Where I have a problem with is this attempt to equate the current crisis to COVID and the war in Ukraine?
Oh, I didn't seek to equate. Maybe I only linked it for
Yeah,
what
but
it's
even the
worth.
linking is a problematic because
Okay,
you're dealing
let
with
me-
two completely different scenarios. The Strait of Hormuz is not in Ukraine, it's not in Russia. Okay? The Russian-Ukrainian war did not affect oil the way this war is affecting oil. The two situations are completely different. You have to understand that. Now, for me, no student of geopolitics can argue that we are insulated from anything and everything that happens around the world. I mean, if there's a problem in Grenada, it can have consequences for Ghana and so on. So to that extent, the war in Ukraine also had some consequences for Ghana. COVID had some circumstances for Ghana. The question is, what was the extent of the consequences? And as Edoji Tamakro explains, the impact of external conflicts on our economy is dependent on the extent of prudent management of our economy. If you manage your economy prudently, you can minimize the risk. Assuming that we were exchanging the cedi to the dollar at 17 cedis to a dollar, what would the prices be at the pump? They'll be much higher than they are today. It is because today we are exchanging at 11 cedis to a dollar that you have the price as they are today. So the internal management of the economy is crucial. In fact, it's the most crucial indicator. Now, I didn't want to go back to the COVID era and so on. When we had COVID, we had substantial relief from our so-called foreign partners. There was a lot of grants and so on. What did we use it for? You know how we use that money. We shared it to parliamentary candidates. If I'm lying, tell me. Is that prudent management of the economy? It is not. So if we had prudently utilized the resources we gained as a result of COVID and so on, we would not have had the crisis that we had. But we didn't prudently manage those resources. We squandered those resources on useless things that had no bearing, no relevance to the management of the national economy. That's one of the things that, needs to be spoken about. You understand? Now, the war on Ukraine, its main impact was on agriculture. Agriculture and food supplies. That was one of the major impacts of the war on Ukraine. For example, fertilizer. It affected the importation of fertilizer, chemical fertilizer, not organic fertilizer, chemical fertilizer from Ukraine and also from Russia.
True.
Why did we get there? Why did we suffer as a result? We suffered as a result largely because our governments had failed to develop organic fertilizer as a substitute. And we have the capacity to develop organic fertilizer as a substitute to chemical fertilizer. We didn't do it, and that is why we were so badly hit. Okay? Why does, not just Ghana, the whole of Africa, why do we depend on food supplies from Ukraine and elsewhere? When indeed it's a fact that 2/3 of the arable lands of the world are in Africa.
Yeah.
It doesn't simply make sense. So if we suffer from Ukraine, it is because of the fact that we are not managing our affairs properly and so on. Today, even though we will be directly hit by the crisis in West Asia, especially around the Strait of Hormuz and so on, because we are running an inflation rate of 3.3, because the cedi to the dollar rate has improved significantly, because the economy itself had grown by a certain margin, as you said this morning and so on, the impact will be minimized. Yeah. These are the facts.
So
these are the facts.
There are no, you see, there are no doubt as to currently the impact of what is happening to our economy and the strength of the economy today to absorb to an extent where we are.
Yeah.
The caution that I've always given, and I've given this caution right in 2025, the fundamentals that we always talk about, including the agric and all of those things, governments over time have not strengthened the internal fundamentals. The things we are talking about, it's all because we have now high cost of gold prices, which is giving us so much in terms of forex. If the gold price today should drop, it started coming down, it's now around 4,000 something. It went all the way to 6,000, 7,000. It's now dropped a bit to 4,000 thereabout. Should gold prices continue to fall and fall sharply, what would happen to these fundamentals that we always talk about, building a strong economy domestically, improving on our manufacturing sector, creating more industries, creating more domestic jobs for the people? The agric sector that we've been talking about, what kind of support are we giving to the agric sector so that we can build our own, these happenings concerning tomatoes and all of that, that people have to go to other countries to import when we have the ability to do all of these domestically? What has been the clear government initiatives or policies to strengthen these domestic economies? So when we are making these conversations and arguments, it is not as if you don't give credit where it is due. We are all very clear in our minds where we are today from where the government took up in 2025. Dollar was at 4, it was exchanging at 14. Now it is 10.85 at interbank. At the open market, is selling at 11.5. We all know how much it has taken us to pump money through the gold reserves and the rest to cushion the economy. It's all good. But for how long? If these things, if the prices of gold and cocoa and all of, like the cocoa shocks that happened to us, if we have done much better planning in the cocoa sector, would we have reduced the cocoa farmers' prices during that window? No. So there are a whole lot of national conversations how we build a resilient and a strong economy. But if we just for a short term, and I talk about this short term because we've been there before. This is not the first time Ghana has run an inflation below 10%. Yes, 3.8 is very significant today.
3.3 now.
Yes, but we've been to 5% before, and we rose sharply to 50% or 35%. It means that what we see today, if we don't manage things right, we would gradually see all these things going back to where we never wanted to be. So when we create these cautions, it is not as if we don't appreciate what is happening today. But the things that we need to do to build that resilient and strong economy, I don't see them. And I ask these questions every day in Parliament. The agric sector, 1 year, we're going 1.5 years down the line. What really have we done? Previous government talked about planting for food and jobs. It was an initiative that was created. What was the impact? Today we said we are doing, how did they call the agric sector intervention? the NDC agric sector intervention. They have a name for it, not a Jumera. You see, we have cliches. We use terminologies and words, but at the end of the day, you don't see their implementation. 2025, the agric sector suffered greatly because releases to the ministry hadn't come. Go and engage again as at the first quarter, the ministries. They are still suffering from releases of government. So you go 2 years with minimal investment in the areas that are critical. And then when the shocks begin to happen.
To the Feed Ghana program.
The Feed Ghana program,
Feed Ghana program.
Included and Kokon Kitenkete that you can't exactly. So we have a lot to do and we don't have much time. Government programs have to go on. Support for the areas have to be given. We need to go beyond relying on these macroeconomics, which are good, but only for a while if we don't build the other buffers.
Okay.
And so that is how I want
us to look. Let me read some messages, or you have.
Oh, just to tie.
Just a quick one to tie.
Again,
okay.
I mean, to be honest, Honorable, you are right. Only to some extent. Again,
Kwesi, you introduced me to only to an extent.
Yes. And I'll explain. You see, You're right to the extent that no sustainable economic development is possible with reliance on commodity prices.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy. Commodity prices cannot give you sustained economic development. And some of the developments we are seeing now is based on favorable commodity prices like gold and so on, you know. So you are right to that extent. Okay. My problem, however, is this. Today, the economic program that the government of the NDC is running is not substantially different from the economic program that the NPP ran.
Correct.
We are not out of the IMF program yet. So it's still the IMF program we are running. So both governments are running the same economic program. The platform is the same. So you have to ask an important question. How is it that the two governments are running the same economic program and yet the outcomes are different? That's an important question.
And just a feeling, then you continue.
Okay,
the outcomes are not different. They are consistent because when we started the IMF program, we saw all the indicators dropping sharply up to the end of 2024. So when the NDC took over, they continued from where we left off, and that is why the trajectory has gone to where we are. So under the program, you didn't see any deviation negatively. All the indicators were very positive.
With that. Yeah. I wouldn't fully agree with that. And there are indicators. I'm not going to go there.
Yes.
You want to drive me there, but let me stay on my lane. You understand? So the two governments are running essentially the same program, but outcomes, as far as I'm concerned, are different. There must be some reason for it. And for me, the reason is prudence and discipline. These two ingredients are the ingredients which determine that even though they are running the same program, one appears to be doing better than the other. Discipline and prudence, you understand? But you see, discipline and prudence cannot by themselves lead to economic resuscitation and sustenance of the development effort. It cannot. You need something else. You need a new vision and so on. And I insist that the pursuit of the neoliberal order is what has been responsible for our current condition. We could have done much better if we had abandoned the neoliberal order, which Jerry Rawlins's government embraced with both hands and feet in 1982. You understand? The economic recovery program, the structural adjustment program, the consequences, and so on. Some of the shocks we are suffering today are largely the result of that embrace of the neoliberal order by Jerry Rawlins's government in 1982-83. You understand? But that's some history that we can deal with much later. Now I'm saying that we need a new paradigm of development. We need a completely new paradigm of development which recognizes that there are so many things we can do for ourselves as a people and as a nation. Okay? Which also recognizes, establishes what the national priority is. I don't think that the national priority is to just lower inflation, improve the value of the cedi as against the dollar, and so on. I don't think that ought to be the national priority. What I think concretely ought to be the national priority is the improvement of the standard of life of the Ghanaian. And it may come at a cost which will disturb the microeconomic indicators. So we are talking about improved access to education. We are talking about job creation. We are talking about availability of food and health essentials and so on. Those should be the national priorities rather than these statistical averages. Because the statistical averages don't tell you everything. Right. They tell you only something, not everything. You understand? So if we were to focus on the real needs of the Ghanaian people and how to achieve those real needs of the Ghanaian people and so on, economic development will then begin to make more sense to the people in the streets and so. That's the point I'm making.
Okay, we'll take a short break, but I have lots of messages that I'm going to read. Please stay with us. It's Good Morning Ghana on Metro Television.
Ukraine-Russia war. Now Ukraine-Russia, Omokwa, ya Ghana for ya home. Yeah, it's your baby. Ukraine-Russia war. What's not play mu now? Kasa wo call Ukraine now. Ufi Accra, 7,000 kilometers and San Wakodru. No more come on tokwa. Then say Yesikasem. Na Cote d'Ivoire and son kasa. Say Russia, Ukraine, no more come. And so,
a few moments later,
Ghana is not immune from the shocks of global events.
To us is how can global phenomena skip Cote d'Ivoire and all the surrounding countries and only attack Ghana? How? How does it happen? The question that you have to ask is how can global phenomena skip Cote d'Ivoire and all the surrounding countries and only attack Ghana? How does it happen? The question that you...
Start your Kids Day the right way, filled with confidence to take on any challenge. Pepsodent Kids contains the right amount of fluoride and sugar acid protection to care for their developing gums and teeth. Grab either orange or strawberry so they brush with the sweet flavor they love morning and evening. Pepsodent Kids, giving your children a bright smile for a brighter future. The Ghana Exim Bank is 10 years old. Hooray! And to commemorate this milestone, the Ghana Exim Bank is hosting a two-day international conference on the theme, A Decade of Enabling Export Trade and Industrial Transformation, Resetting GEXIM for the Next Frontier. The event takes place on the 25th to 26th of March at the Kempinski Hotel, Gold Coast City, 8 a.m. each day. President of the Republic, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, will perform the official opening of the conference. Special guest and speaker, Honorable Elizabeth Ofosue-Jari, Minister for Trade, Agribusiness and Industry. Conference host is Honorable Sylvester Adina Mensah, Chief Executive of the Ghana Exim Bank. For inquiries, call 0208-541-480 or visit eximbankghana.com/conference to register. Media partners, Daily Graphic, Media General, The Multimedia Group, City FM, Radio Gold and Channel 1 TV. And knowledge partners include IFC and SME Finance Forum.
Yes, next. Hey, Nadia Benson,
me didn't tum Mr. Femi Kakalika, just call me cockroach. Now, Mr. Femi once now.
Hey, that's you. Improve car. Yeah. Captain, mosquito, double the accent.
Sasso spray, me se fene sasso quell. Yeah, to ma sasso senunya.
Sasso, come tum preko.
When nations rise, it begins with bold conversations. When economies grow, it is driven by partnership. This April, Ghana's business and policy leaders converge at the Pro Business Forum 2026, the nation's premier platform for investment, enterprise, and economic transformation, with special guest of honor, His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama, joining captains of industry, financial institutions, investors, and entrepreneurs.
The Pro Business Forum is more than just an event. It is a call to action. And so let us work together to build a Ghana that is competitive, productive, and inclusive, and a Ghana that creates opportunities for all.
Come, let's engage in high-level dialogue, explore industry exhibitions, build powerful networks, and unlock real opportunities from finance and insurance to manufacturing, agribusiness, SMEs, and innovation. This is where it all happens. From the 3rd to the 5th of April 2026 at the Kwesi Convention Center in Pratt Hills. Go to www.kwesibusinessforum.com and register now. To register for exhibitions, call 059 555 5885 or 059 555 5995. Kwesi Business Forum. Connect, promote, grow.
Right, interesting developments in Morocco, isn't it? Yeah, we'll look at that at the tail end of the conversation. Morocco has been declared the winner of the CAF football event that happened in January this year. We'll look at the implications of the change of the swapping, let me put it that way, of or the declaration of Morocco as the winners and not Senegal. Quite an interesting development as far as the African football is concerned. It was all over on BBC this morning. We'll spend some minutes on that at the tail end of the discussion. But I want us to quickly do this. But before we do that, let me just say that the Minerals Commission has some important information that it wants us to share with you. It says it's public notice, caution to the general public on fraudulent emails and impersonation. The Minerals Commission of Ghana wishes to bring to the attention of the general public, stakeholders and participants within the mining sector that it has recently received reports of fraudulent emails and communications being circulated by individuals impersonating staff of the Commission. These individuals are falsely presenting themselves as officials of the Minerals Commission and using unofficial email addresses and digital platforms to contact members of the public, investors and companies under the pretext of facilitating mineral licenses, permits, registrations, payment, or other regulatory services. In some instances, these impersonators attempt to solicit money or request sensitive information, claiming to act on behalf of the Commission. The Minerals Commission wishes to unequivocally state that these communications are fraudulent and do not originate from the Commission or any of its authorized officers. The Commission does not request payment or confidential information through unofficial channels, private email accounts, or third-party intermediaries. So all official correspondence from the Commission is conducted through authorized institutional channels. The public is thereby strongly advised to exercise caution when dealing with individuals or entities claiming to represent the Minerals Commission. Stakeholders are encouraged to verify all communications and avoid making payments or sharing sensitive information with unknown persons who claim to act.
PENDREAM TV. Now, so far so good. Say open online portal e Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.